Today we're going to talk about 10X. You have to do something massively different. If you don't make that decision and ditch down at some point, you will be serving customers that are taking your profit away. Delegation is one of the biggest things that steals value from your company if you don't delegate. If you're doing things that are low value, you are stealing from your company.
Welcome to Profits Pints, where strategy meets great conversation and real-world action. I'm Samantha Doyle. Grab a drink, settle in, and let's dive into this month's big idea.
Did you know that 98% of all businesses in Oregon have 10 or less employees? Did you guys know that? Why do you think that is? We all like being our bosses, right? Do you guys like that? Yeah, so part of it is people they get a little afraid or they don't know how to do the next level. And so those that figure it out, go on to build bigger businesses. And so one of the formulas that I use in growing my business that I figured out, took me a while, but I figured out how to scale the business in a massive ways instead of small ways. So we're going to cover that a little bit. Sound good? Okay, awesome. So the first thing, understanding is that if you're going to 2X your company, really all you need to do is do more of what you're doing, right? So if you're a flooring guy, you got to lay more floors, right? You got to lay bigger floors. And the way you do that is obviously you get more clients, but the other way you do that is you get more guys to lay floors or girls to lay floors. And you can grow that way. You can scale that way. So you got to do more jobs, get more employees. What else? See, I'm cheating now. It's a little more complex because you're growing in a way that makes it more complex. As you're going through those scales, now you need a full-time bookkeeper. Now you need a human resource person. Now you need all these different people to help with the company. And so that's a traditional way most companies grow. With small business, what that usually means is overwhelm for the owner, right? Because you're taking on things, you don't have employees that are really doing everything the way you would want them to. And so some people get afraid of that. I know I did when I was growing my business. Or they don't know how to do it. And so they're just kind of figuring it out. They don't have the money to hire someone that's an expert on how to do it. So they're just bootstrapping it. Anybody doing that or doing that in their business? Pretty common. Huh? So the concept of 10X is really that you have to do something like massively different than what we just talked about. You have to completely change, how you approach things. And those are things like really understanding how do you do this in a real scalable way. One of the things we talk about is how do you do it with 80% less expense than you have than the old way. Some of that is, using technology, hiring the right people, but a lot of it is your customer selection, like how you decide who you work with. So niching down, right? And understanding, how you can really amplify that 20% of your business. It's like if you had 100 more of these customers, it would be awesome, right? Anybody have customers like that? Like, man, if I just had 10 more of this guy, I would be awesome, and I could dump these other 10 that are just a pain, right? You guys agree with that? I mean, I know I had that. So one of the things that I did in my business, my calibration business, as we were scaling, not to get into too much detail, but there's high compliance accredited calibrations, and there's low compliance calibrations that are just for measurements. And so I decided to do only high compliance. And so I grew my business as the highest priced place in town, because that's all we did. And when people came to me and wanted this lower value one, I said no. And that enabled me to really scale these higher profit clients. And so that's a strategy. And when you're young in your business and you're young and you're growing, I was 31 when I was doing this, you don't know what's gonna work and you're afraid to say no to a customer. Anybody been afraid to say no to a customer? Yeah, so it's really important to understand that that's a scalable model that if you don't make that decision and ditch down at some point, you will be serving customers that are taking your profit away and taking your energy and your passion and anything else they can take, right? And so just be really conscientious of that. Samantha has her example here, and she said, you can use my example or you can just use your own example. So I just used my own example, but with Jeff, everybody know Jeff, the fictitious HVAC guy, he can get more trucks, he can get more techs, he can do those kinds of things. Or he can figure out, how he can niche that down. And he's an HVAC guy, right? So maybe he figures out like one of my friends did in the HVAC business. He became a specialist in condominium retrofits. And so he did those mini splits where he took out baseboard heaters and things that were inefficient. And he put in these mini split HVAC units because it's the only thing you could put in a concrete high rise. And he became an expert at it. And I ran the property management company that he did that for. We became really good friends. It was a good strategy for him, right? So he did that. This is the area I'm going to stumble. I'm just going to tell you that right now. The clarity of your focus is really what we're talking about. As Samantha's been growing her business and as we've grown other businesses, we've really tried to say, okay, what do we do best? And some of you have heard the term like best in the world at, that she's talked to you. What are you best in the world at? And so a big part of that is really zeroing in on that clientele and then zeroing in on what your concentrated efforts can bring the most value to them. Because the more value, more you can charge, right? And hopefully the more you charge, the more profitability you'll have. So an example that we use for Jeff is that residential was not working very well for Jeff because it's just not a lot of income there. And so understanding that commercial and preventative maintenance, that's what PM stands for, preventative maintenance was a really good way of cash flowing. And when you acquired a customer, if you're doing preventative maintenance for them, you don't have to sell to that customer again. You just have to take care of them, right? And then you keep them. And that was the key in my business. We were in the calibration business. We had like 97% customer retention. And it takes a lot of effort to do that, but it's worth it. It's worth it in the end because when I sold a new customer, I knew that customer was with me for 5 to 10 years at least. And so you're starting to understand that. Leveraging your time and your talent. One of the things that Samantha and I have talked about often with the clients we've worked with is, what's your time worth as a CEO? And we talk about CEO, sometimes the CEO is laying floors or, fixing toilets or, doing the financial plan, all those different things. They're doing it themselves. And as your company evolves, that's not the best thing you should be working on. You shouldn't be the technician in a lot of businesses. And so as you scale that and you can have people that are making less money, that are costing you less, doing the lower level things, you can really elevate that. That's really about efficiency, processing efficiency. These days with AI, who's using AI in their business now? They're already using it, right? How much time has that saved you, right? How much more profit can you have if you can do a proposal? I got dropped into something similar to this a few weeks ago for one of my other clients where we were doing a 56-person mastermind and it was a teaching subject and the person that was teaching it could not make the call. And I didn't know what her subject was. I didn't know what she was teaching. I just knew it was about helping businesses that are struggling with the current administration changes that are happening in DC, because it was for government contractors. And so in less than 20 minutes, I figured out the subject I wanted. I used ChatGPT to build a PowerPoint, and I was on Zoom presenting. And I looked like I knew what I was doing. I really didn't, but I looked like I knew what I was doing because chat helped. So I couldn't have done that before. And the deliverable was great. So that's a big part of how that helps by leveraging your time and your talent. And this isn't just yours, it's your team's. And so making sure you have the right people with the right talent at the right time. A little harder when you're small, right? It's hard to hire, the high dollar person and get them to do the right thing. So you're bootstrapping it a little bit. But everybody has a superpower. And so really understand that. And you have a superpower. And so that's really important. Next, obviously, is the innovation. The predictable revenue, I'm going to jump to that. So subscription models, it's really common now, right? Who has Netflix? Who's paying the other $3 a month that they charge? We all said yes, right? Who has like 15 different apps so they can watch all the shows that they want to watch, right? And you can't remember where it's at. So that's a model where there's recurring revenue. And that recurring revenue raises the lifetime value of your client, which means your cost to service them is less. And so that's one of the models of innovation that can help. It's not so innovative anymore. Everybody's doing it, right? So then how do we do that? Because people are pushing against it some. The LTV was lifetime value. I want to talk about the scope creep a little bit. So how many people have seen businesses or in their own business just keep adding services or just keep adding different things they're doing because they're trying to figure out like, where am I at? What am I doing when they're young? And then once they've added all that, they're like, gosh, I wish I wasn't doing X, Y, Z. It's just wasting me money and wasting me time. And so you got to really make sure you're understanding that scope creep can happen naturally. You guys know we own an IT company in town, the Nerd Stuff. So we bought that Practical Computers in Springfield, and Practical Computers did computer repairs. And we haven't officially announced this yet, but you guys will be the first to hear it. December 31st will be our last computer repair that we will ever do for a residential client. We already stopped residential in-house services. It's 80% of our work and like 15% of our income. So it doesn't make sense for us to do that. Now that was our strategy from the very beginning when we bought Practical Computers, because that was just a cash flow vehicle to get us started as a managed services company in town. And so that was a strategy. And if you don't have a strategy and you haven't built a strategy to do that, you can get trapped in that scope creep. And pretty soon you got all these customers you love, they love you, they keep paying you money to do this thing that you're not actually making any profit on. And so be wary of that. If you're doing that, inventory your revenue streams, all your services, and I would do that every year, if not every quarter, but certainly every year, and say, is this a dog for us or is this a good revenue stream for us? Is this still relevant to the marketplace? Is this something that I should be doing in the right way? If you dump the ones that aren't, and you put your efforts into the ones that are really making you money, they're really, pumping up your tires, I would say, right? Pumping up your tires on your bike. Like, I'm excited about doing this. The energy level that you and your team are going to get is going to really scale. And your customers will start knocking on your door because it's very clear what you're doing. And your ideal customer will come. Those ideal customers will learn that they're not coming. Now, the team at the Nerd Stuff's been pushing me to allow them to do this for a long time. I had to wait till the cash flow was where it was. I'm the CFO for that company. I don't work in the company, but I manage it since I'm their investor too. So I'm managing it, and they're like asking, when can we do it? We just hate doing this stuff. We don't want to do it. So if you're doing something like that, I would just keep that in your mind and figure out what you can drop that you can put that energy into something better. Make sense? Okay. So strategic multipliers, partners, acquisitions, platforms, or technical, like CRMs, those type of things, they help. Partnerships is the way that I grew, sort of. I grew through acquisition, but that started out with partnerships, strategic partnerships with my competitors, where we helped cover each other's territories. We were in 47 countries, 47 states, and sometimes we had someone in eastern South Dakota that we couldn't get to. And I had a competitor that was in Minnesota, and they could get to him. And so I would just call up my buddy and say, hey, I can't get to this guy. Can you take care of him? With the gentleman's agreement that they were my client again during the routine. And that worked really well. And for me, that led to a relationship. When he was ready to retire, I bought his company. And so that was part of the growth strategy. So be creative. Look at those people you're collaborating with. Look at those people that have the eyes and the ears of your customer, that are giving them a different product that those clients could use your product too. And using someone else's network is the best way to grow. BNI, you guys are in BNI. Everybody here in BNI? Some kind of BNI group? You guys have a network and you're growing. All of you are growing. Hopefully all of you are growing, because of that network. So that's an example of that too. Anybody have any examples that I didn't mention that you can think of as far as partnerships or how you can use other people's networks to really grow?
One quick thing for if using the tech aspect, I do a lot of bank downloads for my clients, and I've started. The old methodology was they would take it down, look at the printout. Okay, well this is John Doe, and he does this.
Mm-hmm.
This is Truck and Travel, and they sell this, and they would hand enter all that. And I've started implementing rules for downloads. So anything that shows up that says Truck and Travel, is automatically automotive. Because it's a vehicle expense. That's what they do there. They sell gas. If it's Nerd Stuff, monthly subscription with Nerd Stuff.
Yep.
That's IT services. And so as soon as it comes down from the bank, AI has identified that, assigned an expense category to it, filed it away.
That's a great example. AI is doing a lot of incredible things. Some people are afraid of it, but some people are really embracing it. And I would encourage you to embrace it. It's a tool. It's just another tool. And if you don't embrace it, it's going to run you over. So be careful about that. But we're in a world. I'm an old guy, right? But we're in a world right now that is changing in amazing ways. And I've seen a lot of changes in my career in running businesses. I've been running businesses since 1998 as an owner, and 10 years before that as an employee. And the innovation that's available now is like, if I could have seen that 20, 30 years ago, I'd have been all over it. And these girls are. Samantha and Sky are on it. Sky's becoming an expert in AI, but definitely do that stuff. So basically, understand the clarity of what you're going to be focusing on. This is the number one thing that I think entrepreneurs really get in trouble with, because they're so scattered at the beginning. They really are going everywhere. Anybody that'll pay them money, right? That's what's happening in a lot of ways. And so avoid that. Really try and zero that in. You might need to do that to bootstrap it a little bit to get some cash flow, like we did with the Nerd Stuff and buying that computer company. But make sure you have a plan to get out of that, as long as you get that cash flow going. The time and the talent, of course. Understand what really lights you up and what really you can give the most energy to. Because I can tell you, during the tough times, that energy and that passion is what's going to get you through it. When you're working hard and you're working long hours, if you don't have the passion and the energy for that business, you're going to really struggle. So make sure you're running to that passion, because you'll grow it from a passion more than anything else. I have a client that I'm coaching that's about $100 million immigration attorney. A lot of changes happening in immigration right now. And I had a call with her today just before this call. And if she didn't have the passion that she had for helping those immigrants, I don't think she would have given up, but others would have given up. But it's a tremendous driver, is the passion. It's not just her passion, but the passion of her team. And it's incredible to watch. I started coaching this client when she was at $4 million in revenue 5 years ago. And she's really helped a lot of immigrants. And these days, there's a lot more to help. And so that passion's getting her through it. And we were talking about how to keep the team passionate about what was happening. And so that's the kind of thing that's really important there. Obviously, the innovation, we got lots of stuff to do there. And then those multipliers. Next, I'm just going to plug this right now. Next month, we're going to be talking with a panel about growth through acquisition. It's going to be incredible. We've got, I think, 5 panelists. I'll touch on that a little more later. But you'll learn a lot at the next one. So put it on your calendar now. The Making the Space, this is for the worksheet. There we go.
Yeah, this is for the worksheet.
Yeah,
So
Sky knows this worksheet better than anybody else.
So you're going to start thinking about the top 20%, the things that you want to keep or amplify within your business. Think about 3, if you can, and list them there.
Use the mic, Sky.
Sorry.
She didn't know I was putting her on the spot until just now.
Is this like client type or activity?
So it would be client, an offer, or an activity. So if you have different offerings, different client, like if you have like a specific, your ideal client that you're like, yeah, I want more clients like this, you would include something like that. If there's a certain activity or product or offering that you have that you do prefer that, has the best outcome or income that you get from that, that would be another option.
Yeah, and you do commercial brokerage, right?
Yeah, residential, yes, sir.
Oh, residential?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He called me sir.
You're older than myself.
Okay. I thought my dad was here for a second. But yeah, understanding those different revenue streams, for like the IT company was a great example. Residential in their home, residential repairs in our facility, and then the repairs for the business versus the managed services in their networks. And so we had to really figure out our path to that.
Now, an example I can think of is actually with our leadership development company. We had a few different offerings when we purchased the company, and we started to realize that the most profitable and the most sought after offerings that we did have that worked with our most ideal client was actually custom work and not our open enrollment workshops. So we've decided to switch gears and move more towards that custom work.
Yep. And we just landed a big account with Clackamas County.
Yep.
Really good. Our second engagement with them. So Sky was instrumental in that. So it's fantastic. Okay, you got some ideas down? Okay, so this is the hardest part, dropping or delegating. If I asked you in your business, if you have employees at all, to delegate 50% of what you do starting tomorrow, what would you say? Could you guys do it? You could do it? Okay, I'm going to be talking to you later. We'll make sure. Delegation is one of the biggest things that steals value from your company if you don't delegate. If you're doing things that are low value, you are stealing from your company, right? And so figure out how you can delegate. And of course, you got to watch your financials and all that stuff. And you're not going to hire somebody and delegate everything and go, oh, I don't get a paycheck. You got to make sure you're doing that. Oh yeah, the other thing was drop, right? What are you doing that you shouldn't be doing anymore? We did this in my calibration business. We started doing the other businesses where we did an annual review. We did an internal audit and then an annual review. And during that annual review, we just looked at everything we were doing as a company and said, what do we need to not do anymore? What are we doing just because we've always done it that way? How many people have heard that? Or how many people have said that in their business or in their job they had, right? And that's the fast path to failure. The private equity group that I partnered with in growing my business in the last year and a half, they've done some extraordinary things that are sacred. They were sacred cows for me. I kept doing them because we'd always done it that way. And they said, this doesn't make any sense. And they were right, it didn't make any sense, but emotionally it did for me. And so I kept doing it. So they're able to find captured profit in the business that I wasn't willing to find. And so there's probably something in your business where that's happening too, right? So what did Jeff do? Let's see. Say no to one-off residentials. That's a good decision for an HVAC. And it frees up capacity for larger, calmer revenue. That's an interesting word, calmer. Calmer probably means easier to manage, right? So if you had to 10x in 3 years, what one bold move would you make? What's your 10x move in your business? What are you willing to commit to? What do you have the courage to do? What capability are you not exploiting, I would say, right? And then what do you have the confidence to do, but you still haven't done it yet? So the example here that I would give while you're thinking about that is in the leadership company that Samantha owns, there is basically we came across this necessity to really assess companies and where they were in the leadership what did they actually need? And that company serves businesses that have like 500 plus, is that the right avatar for that? 500 plus companies. Some of them are 2,000 employees, big, government agencies, things like that. And one of the things that we started figuring out is that people were just throwing solutions at things before they actually knew the problem, right? And these big companies were just paying for it. Oh, you got a seminar on, how to work better with your team in a virtual environment. Okay, do they actually need to solve that or not? They didn't really know. Nobody really knew when that first started happening, right? And so what our approach was is to basically use an assessment. What do we call it? Organizational health assessment.
Yeah.
That's what her acronym stands for. Thank you, Sky. And so our approach in that business is to do an organizational health assessment to really understand that organization from a survey and an assessment model. And the search was on. We were trying to find assessments, all kinds of assessments. Could be Kolbe, could be Myers-Briggs, could be 5 dysfunctions of team assessment, lots of other assessments that people are using. And as we were evaluating these, we're feeling like no one thing fits what we're looking for. And so, I'm going to share, I think, how this happened. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But we were at a trade show for a human resource trade show. I forget what it was called. It was in Portland. I went, and somebody said, "Oh, do you do your own assessment or do you use someone else's assessment?"
So it's actually with a meeting with a client.
Was that a meeting with a client?
Yeah, a meeting with a client where she had mentioned that that's something that they did. And then we actually met with the founder, Chris. And Chris had mentioned, she was like, how do you determine what they need? Because oftentimes, even the HR director might not even know what exactly they need. It's really a culmination of what the employees think and what they get back from the surveys. And so she was like, have you ever thought about doing an assessment? And then that got us to thinking. And then we're like, you know what, maybe we should do that. So then we started looking into different assessments. We found the organizational health assessment, a couple different ideas, and we're like, we could do this better. And so there was that. And then so we decided, let's just do it. We hadn't even created it yet, right? We created the flyer of
Created the flyer at this before this trade show.
Yeah.
Started selling it.
Yeah, we went to the trade show for HR directors and they ate it up. They loved it. And we're like, all right, we actually got to make this now.
So then Samantha stayed up till like 4 a.m. that night doing it and got it all roughed out, gave it to Sky and said, what do you think? And she started working on it. Is it done? It's not completely
almost
done.
We're pretty much done with it. Alan,
Yeah.
IT with the nerd stuff, he's actually helping us build it out. So we have it basically the whole
software part of
survey
it out.
completed, but
Yeah.
he's helping us build out so that it looks pretty essentially.
So we had the commitment to build a premier, full, customized organizational health assessment. That's how that came about. We had the courage to actually do it. Say, you know what, we're doing this. And so much so that we sold it before it was done. And then the capability, we knew enough research was in place. We had enough information to start pulling that together and run with that and the capability. And then the confidence to launch it in less than a month, because the first client's getting it in less than a month from when we made that decision. And first of all, that's my daughter. You should know that if you don't know that. But in your company, what can you do through that process to make a drastic change that would run money to the bottom line, maybe completely change the way you look at your business, and how do you scale that? Anybody have anything that's coming to mind that they want to share? Anybody going, you guys are crazy, there's no way this is,
I can share what
Okay.
I think. So I've had my agency for almost 15 years now. I started a bit niche, and then I sort of kind of opened up the market to serve all kinds of service-based businesses. So I was trying to diversify the revenue and get more revenue. And so we'll do all the marketing things for service-based businesses. And the beginning of this year, or really last year, I started to look at stuff and realize, okay, these things that we're doing are not profitable or less profitable. And these things that we're doing over here are very profitable and very easy and very nice. And so I went through and reorganized the service offering and then re-niched back down to just working with wedding companies, really just working with party rental companies is really who we specialize with. And then created a 5-path framework of website brand, SEO, email marketing, digital ads, and online reputation. And that's it. And so that allows us, and then our scale was by working with rental companies across the country instead of being in kind of where we had previously sort of been as one kind of a regional market, and scaling through different types of companies. We instead scaled more nationally, which I think people are more open to now in that space. The one thing that I think is interesting, it's worked really well, and it has, and so we can duplicate everything, because the blog posts that we're doing in Tallahassee can be duplicated over in, wherever. And so that, I think, allows us to really productize our service offering. And it was how I thought about it. Driving across the country in a car by yourself is when it dropped in. So I highly recommend that you put yourself in unusual situations where you can think about things, because that's what helped me to figure out like how to do this, and then how to be okay with cutting all the like custom graphic work that we were doing that everybody needs, and everybody will give you stupid amounts of money for it, but it's like super time consuming. You have all these edits, you're having to go back and forth, and it was like, this isn't as profitable as stuff that we are basically just managing for the client and giving them every month. So
Sounds like it's working.
yeah, it's still in the process of kind of, as we've shifted the barge, so to speak. But yeah, I definitely am seeing it's working, and my life is much easier.
Nice.
That's the point, right? The one thing that I think I want to just mention about this, or I guess I would have a devil's advocate question here, because the idea of 10Xing, I think, for small businesses, I feel like sometimes that creates a conflict with supporting your community. Because if Jeff, HVAC guy, says, I'm no longer helping residential people, well, where do they all go? And so that to me is always kind of an interesting part of being a business owner, especially if you are a local, community-based business owner. And how do you scale in a way where you can still, and I say this as a person who has pivoted and has, left people behind, but how you, figure that out as a business owner and still allow yourself to scale and maybe it's about deviating how we understand scale. It's not just being profit or revenue, but scale of impact or scale of, et cetera, et cetera. So that, I just kind of throw that out there as a conversation starter.
Yeah, let me address that just a little bit from my perspective, and I'll use the IT company as an example. One of the things that when we made the decision to stop serving those clients, we're not just going to start saying no. And I'm actually working on some relationships, some partnerships to find a solution for them. And there might be some monetary exchange in that. I might sell that book of business before December. But we're likely going to create or find a company that does that service, those services. I already have several identified, but we'll likely double their business by giving them the business we don't want.
Yeah, Marshall, is that kind of in the same token as one of those 4 sections of leveraging your time and talent? So how you mentioned having other people that you partner with, like you mentioned in that location or the state that you didn't have services in, you could leverage other
or the
local.
strategic multipliers.
Oh, yeah.
Network.
That's
Yep.
right, strategic
Using someone else's
multipliers.
network, yeah. But you bring up a really good point, because as small business owners, remember that passion I was talking about a few minutes ago. That passion is to really help them, and and it's possible that Cindy and Roger were the owners of Practical Computer before us. They retired. They never made that change after 30 years, and because they loved that community and engagement, and just with the two of them, they made enough money to make a living. They enjoyed where they're at. And there's a difference between building a lifestyle business and building a scalable business. And all businesses start out in a startup phase, then they move to a growth phase, and then they move to a scale phase. What scale phase eludes, as we said earlier, 98% of the businesses. What you brought up is probably why, a big part of it, because they want to stay in that niche. They want a lifestyle business. And they really want to understand, that they're part of the community. But I think there's other ways to be part of that community and still support that community. When we said no in my calibration business to those other services, we had another partner calibration firm that we would refer them to. And there was no monetary exchange during that, but that's how we would do it.
I think you bring up a really good point, and something that I think a lot of business owners don't think about or get around to is really quality succession planning. And how are you, allowing this to carry forward? Like, that's the number one thing I'm thinking about now, is how am I going to set my team up and my clients up to be taken care of long after I want to continue to be part of this. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that we just don't really have a lot of conversations around. We don't have a lot of transparency in business around, having these conversations of like, hey, I kind of want to sell my business, but like, I don't really want to talk to my competitors about that. And how do I even do that and not get into these mergers and acquisitions, these big complicated situations? And so I think that, and I know we talked a little bit about that last meeting, but I think that that's a space that there just needs to be so much more like conversation about.
Yeah, well, that's actually one of Samantha's niches.
I know, her and I talk all the time.
Okay, so you know, and part of the reason is because she lived that life with me for a long time on the buy side, and one of the things that I discovered in buying, I bought a lot of small companies with 1 or 2 employees that were retiring, and here's one guy in particular. We bought his company last year. He was 82, and I tried to start buying his company when he was 63, and we'd go have breakfast together, and then we'd end up having lunch together too, because we just stayed in there and talked all day. And we eventually bought his company, unfortunately, when he was on the early stages of Alzheimer's. And so that was one of many stories where people didn't have a succession plan, didn't have a retirement of any kind other than what they had invested outside of their company. And so I felt bad for those people. And I didn't take advantage of them. I always did a fair deal. I always used formulas to make sure they knew what was there. But I thought these people really need to have some education and some help to prepare their company so they can sell it. In fact, Samantha and I, when we started SP Coaching, our very first thing we were building, this guy knows this, was how to sell your micro business, or how to prepare your micro business to sell. And we called a micro business that would sell for like $200,000, because a broker won't cover that. It costs too much, and nobody thinks they can sell it. But what if they could? And I bought several of those businesses. And so part of that passion that I got from buying those businesses was to now help them prepare. Unfortunately, we were about to launch that when COVID hit, which was not a good time to do that. So let's see what else I'm supposed to cover here. And maybe we already covered some of it. So the one bold move, Samantha likes this 72-hour action. That's in this book. I can't even remember the author of this book. But
That's a great question.
it's like massive action. Like decide, get past that fear and make that commitment and take massive action. And sometimes that takes place at midnight, on your dining room table, right? That's how you get that next level. That's part of how I scaled my business. I'm ADHD, just like my daughter. She's way better in control of hers than I am, but that was a big part of it. And so what Jeff did is he focused on commercial preventative maintenance. He focused on, systemizing all his operations, bundling outcomes. I'm not sure what she meant by that, but I think it meant bundling the solutions for the clients. So any other questions or anything you want to talk about around this? Any epiphanies that you had about your business, or maybe even it's in a business that you do business with? Yeah. So who has an action or something they're going to do from this that they're going to take away? Do you guys have one? I'm not going to make you share it. You have an action?
Yeah.
You can share it if you want to.
That's fine. I'm new into the employer that I'm with. They've got some life changes coming up ahead of them. They want to retire. So it's either sell or close the business. And they have, when I interviewed with them last month, it was, if we can't find a buyer, we will let you have the clients that you can retain. Which for a bookkeeper getting started, that's like, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah.
What I don't know is what is working for them. Is it tax returns? Is it individual tax returns versus small business versus medium-sized business tax returns? Is it nonprofit returns? And try and tease apart the analysis over the last 4 or 5 years that I don't have access to yet. I'm still too new. What is working? What is their cash? What is their 20%? And so that's my first bold move is to talk with them and say, I want to start looking at this. I want to, understand what's been working for you the best. Here's this big old, book of business, but what is the supportive structure underneath that? Do you need a supportive structure underneath that? And, go from there.
That's a good move, and because you're just going to be a sponge. You're going to learn and be curious and ask. And a big part of my success in the acquisition world was I made it known that I was interested in acquiring businesses. And after the first few, I didn't have to look for anybody. They came to me. They're like, oh, you bought Don's company. Oh, you bought Bill's company. Oh, you bought the other Don's company. And that's how it worked. And then as I got bigger, I could buy more larger companies. And I self-funded all of this. I mean, I did owner contracts and burnouts and things like that. And so we're going to talk more about that next month. But anyway, I hope you guys have some takeaways. I hope I did okay. I know Samantha's a much better presenter than me, but we've got a giveaway. Okay.
Yep. We're giving away 1 seat to our Scaling Up Essentials workshop. And we actually have 2 separate sessions in October. So I think it's October 8th and October 16th, because we had so many people sign up that we had to split it into 2. So we have, I think, 2 more seats left. So if anybody's interested, definitely encourage you to sign up if you aren't the winner today, because we're not going to have another one until at least January. And this one would be a really good one to kind of pave the way for you rolling into the new year.
And if there's anybody else in the workshop, Samantha told me this, if there's anybody that's already coming to the workshop, we're going to make sure you get something of equal or better value if you win today. So we're not giving you money back, but we'll give you something of value.
I'll let you pick, and then you can read the numbers.
Okay. One of them's got to come out. Okay. Here we go. We're just reading a number.
Yep.
Can I just read the last three?
Yep.
375.
Whoop, whoop.
Awesome.
Love it. Okay.
Sky will get that.
Scott's my bestie.
Did you not have one?
You didn't get one? Oh my gosh.
Okay, redraw. No, it's kidding. We'll get you in there. Let's see. What does she have next
And then
here?
the next one is talking about.
So this is next month, and I mentioned this to you I'm going to be one of the panelists because I've done this, but we've got some great people coming to have a discussion around growth through acquisition. And if you're not already a business owner, which most time, this group is business owners, but how do you grow through acquisition? I'm here to tell you, you can do it in any business. I did it in the calibration business. We did it in the welder equipment repair business. Now we're doing it in the IT company right now. And I've got an industrial vacuum pump company in Anaheim, and I'm looking at buying one in Arizona right now. So it's different in each business, but we're going to go over that. We're going to have a panel of experts. We're going to have Lonnie Woodruff, who is the broker we bought Practical Computers through, and we've become great friends. He's an extraordinary dude. Anybody know him? Yeah, isn't he awesome? He's just an awesome guy. Jeff is Heritage Bank, and I hear he's a great guy. I haven't met him, so we'll have him. And Eric, I don't know Eric, but Samantha does, and he's a CPA, and then we've got an M&A attorney coming, and then I'll be here as well. And we're just going to do a series of questions, and we are spending some money on marketing on this group, so we're hopefully going to pack the house. So just put it on your calendar and come. It's going to be great. You're going to have a lot more people to meet. You're going to have a lot more things to understand about it. If you don't think you can scale your business by acquisition, or you don't think it's time yet, just come and learn about it. Because later on it might be. I bought my first company, which was a 2-person company, in 1999. And in 2005, I bought my second company. In 2007 and 2008, I bought 4 more companies. And it just scaled from there. And since I partnered with private equity last year, we bought 21 companies. Now, they have a lot of money that they brought to the table, so that was easier. But this is definitely a scalable model. And given you've heard the silver tsunami, yeah, I'm one of those guys. There's a lot of opportunity, and there's opportunity in this town. You just shared one. There's opportunity in this town, and with your agencies and foreign company, anybody here could do it. So, sound good? Okay, I think that's it.
Yep.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us at Profits and Pints. If you enjoyed this session, we'd love your feedback. Just click the link to fill out the quick survey. Your input helps shape future topics and makes this experience even better. Until next time, cheers to smart moves and great conversation.